So let's talk about that disaster of a press conference marking Trump's 100 days in office. You probably saw it. Scott Bessant trying to calm the world down, telling us that everything's fine, the US is winning, and get that resistance is futile.
I learned to ignore the survey data and look at the actual data, and the actual data has been quite good.
But here's the thing. That whole show, it wasn't confidence, it was damage control, and not even good damage control. Because behind those polished talking points and that forced smile was one blunt truth. The US trade war isn't going well. Not even close. This press conference was basically a guy standing in front of a burning house trying to convince you that fire is a sign of progress. When reporters pressed Bessant on the plan to bring manufacturing back to the US, his answer was simple. The data looks great. The job numbers are great. Americans are still spending. Really? Because the numbers we're looking at tell a completely different story. So here's the real question. If everything's going so well, why does it feel like the floor is falling out from under us? In this video, we're breaking down what really happened at that press conference. The parts they skipped, the facts they buried, and the economic warning signs they're hoping you'll ignore. Because once you look under the hood, it's clear. This isn't a recovery, it's a cover-up. So make sure you're subscribed, and let's get into it. In the 100 Days in Office press conference, Bessant claimed that public surveys were meaningless and that real data proved the economy was strong. But here's the problem. When you look at that real data, it tells a very different story. Job openings, one of the key signs of economic health, have fallen sharply. They dropped from a forecasted 7.49 million to just under 7.19 million, a loss of about 300,000 jobs. That's a red flag. It means fewer opportunities and growing hesitation from employers to hire. The truth is, when people in power pretend everything is fine while the basics are clearly breaking down, it's not leadership. It's denial. Or worse, an attempt to distract from problems that are getting harder to hide. Bessant also praised consumer spending, calling it strong and steady. But again, the facts say otherwise. Consumer spending makes up nearly 70% of US economic activity, so when confidence slips, the impact is huge. According to the Conference Board, consumer confidence has dropped for 5 straight months, a streak we haven't seen since the 2008 financial crisis. People are worried, and that fear is showing up in how they spend, or don't. Inflation is a major reason behind this anxiety. Households are feeling the squeeze. A recent survey shows Americans now expect prices to rise by 4.4% annually over the next 5 years, the highest long-term inflation expectation in 30 years. When people expect prices to keep rising, they get cautious. They save more, spend less, and that feeds into a wider economic slowdown. So when Bessant paints a picture of strong spending, he's ignoring a simple truth. People don't spend when they're scared. It gets more concerning. When asked about the risk of supply chain problems, especially with imports from China down, Bessant casually dismissed any fears. His proof? Weekly chats with confident CEOs. But real-world logistics aren't managed through phone calls and optimism. Retailers need predictability. Tariffs change with every political flare-up, making it nearly impossible for businesses to plan ahead. It's not just frustrating, it's unworkable. Retailers typically place orders months in advance. They rely on stable trade rules to set pricing and manage inventory. Sudden tariff changes can leave them stuck with overpriced goods or empty shelves. Either way, the damage spreads fast. Yet none of that seemed to matter in Bessant's confident narrative. Perhaps the most unrealistic claim came when Bessant suggested that tariff revenue could eventually replace income tax. That's not just misleading, it's mathematically impossible. Let's break it down. In 2022, American households earning under $200,000 paid around $675 billion in income taxes. Tariffs brought in just $100 billion. The gap is massive. You'd have to multiply tariff revenue many times over just to get close, and even then, the result would be disastrous. Tariffs are essentially hidden taxes. They raise prices on imported goods, and those costs get passed on to consumers. Americans end up paying more at the checkout. When prices go up, people spend less. Businesses earn less. And here's the twist. Less spending also means less tariff revenue. It becomes a loop. Raise prices, slow spending, and shrink the very revenue you're counting on. It's a strategy that collapses under its own weight. The deeper issue here isn't just bad math. It's political messaging dressed up as economic policy. Promising to replace income taxes with tariffs might sound tough on China, but it falls apart the second you look at the numbers. And the pain hits working and middle-class families hardest, since they spend more of their income on essentials, the very things getting more expensive. So why stick with this story? Why keep pushing a version of reality that doesn't hold up? The answer might come down to politics. With midterms campaign on the horizon, the White House needs a success story. Even if the real economy is wobbling, it's politically useful to say things are better than ever. But markets don't buy into spin. Wall Street analysts, small business owners, and everyday workers can see what's happening in their bank accounts and their bottom lines. They don't need a press conference to tell them how they're doing. At the center of all these talk about cost of products is China. But why is China so important in this conversation? The Trump administration is betting big on one belief, that China is losing the trade war and will soon back down. That belief is being repeated by political allies and Scott Bessant, who recently said that if US tariffs stay in place, China could lose up to 10 million jobs, and that China needed the US more.
If these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly, and even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs.
On the surface, that sounds like a solid argument, but it misses some very important facts about how China's economy actually works, and why this fight isn't going the way Washington hoped. What many in the US leadership seem to ignore is that while tariffs are hurting China's exports, they're also forcing countries around the world to look for cheaper suppliers. And that's where China comes in again. Nations that can no longer afford to buy finished goods from American manufacturers are turning to China for lower-cost components and raw materials. In other words, the tariffs meant to isolate China may actually be pushing more of the global economy into its arms. At the same time, China has tools that give it an edge in this kind of long standoff. One of the biggest advantages is that China can still borrow money cheaply. Its 10-year government bond yield is sitting at around 1.63%, which gives its government the ability to spend more and keep its industries going without spooking investors. Compare that to the United States, where the same bond yield is over 4%, meaning the government pays more to borrow and has less room to boost the economy with spending. This matters because it shows how much easier it is for China to support its exporters and protect jobs. It can give out subsidies, cut taxes, or boost public investment to cushion the blow of tariffs. In contrast, the US has less financial breathing room, which could make it harder to help American businesses and consumers deal with rising costs. Back in the US, the bond market is flashing warning signs. The gap between short and long-term interest rates, the yield spread, is widening, nearing a full percentage point. That signals investor anxiety about the future. For Americans, it means higher borrowing costs on loans, mortgages, and credit cards. And let's not forget what started all this: tariffs. Those tariffs are making prices go up, and now interest rates are climbing too. That's a dangerous combo. American consumers are being hit from both sides. First when they shop and see higher prices on goods, and then again when they try to borrow money and find it's gotten more expensive. Yet there's no sign that a government stimulus is coming to ease the pressure. This situation isn't just about trade anymore. It's turning into a fight over which country can hold out longer without cracking. Wall Street is feeling the pressure too. Despite recent stock market gains, investor confidence is slipping. Reports from firms like Deutsche Bank show foreign investment in US assets is slowing. Some investors are even pulling their money out entirely. Mutual funds tied to American assets are seeing more outflows than inflows, and that's never a good sign. This means that the recent bounce in the stock market may not be as healthy as it looks. Most of the buying is now coming from American investors, not foreign ones. That's a fragile base to rely on. The US economy needs foreign money to keep asset prices stable and investment flowing. Without it, markets can lose value quickly. And in a country that depends so heavily on constant investment and credit, a pullback could send everything into a downward spiral. If the economic risks weren't enough, some of the public comments coming from the White House have only added to the confusion. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick recently claimed tariffs only raise prices on items the US doesn't produce, like mangoes or cocoa. But that's wrong. Even for domestic goods, tariffs limit cheaper competition and push prices up. Economists across the board agree that tariffs raise consumer prices, and we're already seeing that in stores. From household appliances to electronics, costs are creeping up. Yet the administration still claims tariffs are harmless, or even helpful. That kind of thinking isn't just misleading. It's dangerous. It allows policymakers to ignore the damage until it's too late to fix. Meanwhile, this trade war isn't happening in a vacuum. The global economy is already shaky after years of disruption from the COVID-19 pandemic, supply chain breakdowns, and ongoing energy market shocks. Starting a major economic conflict with China during this time is like pouring fuel on a fire. America's allies, especially in Europe, are worried. Many rely on Chinese parts and manufacturing, and the tariffs are creating chaos for them too. Instead of isolating China, the US is beginning to isolate itself. By acting unilaterally and refusing to listen to economic data, Washington is drifting away from the global trade system it once helped create. The bigger picture here is troubling. The current administration seems to believe that tough talk and hardline tactics will force a win, but that's not how global economics works. It's not about who yells louder. It's about who can manage their economy better and keep the trust of investors and consumers. Right now, China, despite its many challenges, is proving more flexible and strategic. It's finding new markets, keeping credit costs low, and taking steps to limit the damage. The US, on the other hand, is watching its consumers get squeezed, its bond market wobble, and foreign capital quietly slip away. All while leadership clings to a message that no longer matches reality. It's not too late to change course. But if the administration keeps pushing this trade war with no clear exit strategy, it may find itself facing an economic crisis of its own making. So here's the question. No one in power seems ready to answer. How much longer can this go on before American consumers, global investors, and the world at large finally say, enough is enough? Because spin can only go so far. Eventually, reality catches up. If you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The more people understand what's really happening behind the headlines, the harder it becomes for those in power to keep hiding the truth.